Good evening, welcome. This is pjnet.tv as we begin a brand new week with first-time guest number 260, the Norman Rockwell of photography. Yes, is standing by in our green room. Our chat room is waiting. Our bumper is running. We will count it down to Studio 36 Alpha, starting now. Well, good evening, welcome. This is pjnet.tv, and if that's not where you're at watching this, well, you're watching it wrong. You should go to pjnet.tv and watch it with all the friends who are logged into the chat room as we speak. I'm just kidding. Wherever you're at, thank you for stopping scrolling long enough to at least see this. No more wasting time with me, because we've got blessings for you. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. You are going to be blessed, because with us from his home in Ohio, the photographer, the teacher, the author of 5 books, public speaker, husband, father, grandfather, and lover of baseball. David, we do not allow that many titles, so we are going to dispense with lover of baseball. And but let's talk photography. You're a shutterbug. I'm not. I'm kind of pressed into that service, but you've been doing it a long time.
Yeah, I started when I was in high school. I think I started when I was a sophomore in high school, and I had a great photography teacher, and it was probably the right thing to do. It was probably that, or end up in prison someday. I probably was going down the wrong road. It was a good thing.
Photography can be an expensive hobby, can't it?
Well, if you're buying the cameras, it can be. But I worked at 20 newspapers, so they bought the cameras for me. So had I had to buy them all myself, it would have been very expensive. And now I don't have nearly as good equipment as I did when I was working full time. I have 2 or 3 older cameras. They're probably 7 or 8 years old, but they still do the job.
Yeah, I've still got my old 35 millimeter.
Yeah.
Remember Canon AE1?
It works.
Bought it at Sears. Remember them?
I remember I had a friend in New York. His name was Warren, and he said a woman came up to him one day and started yanking on one of his cameras, and she said, "Oh, Mr. English," she said, my husband has a camera just like you, but he can't take pictures like you." He said, "Yes, ma'am. I have a paintbrush at home by Picasso too, and I can't paint like him."
They are tools, and you have over the years. Looking back when you first started, how have you evolved and mutated and grown in photography? Because you're settled in now, right? You're zeroed in on what you want to do.
Pretty much, but what I realized pretty early was that photography was really a voice. It was a language for me. I was pretty shy, and I wasn't a good writer, and photography allowed me to say things that I could never say with words, or I could never say with a pen. Eventually, I ended up becoming a better writer and even a better speaker. But in the beginning, that was my native language, was photography. So I think that I still use it that way. I still believe that it's a tool to allow other people to speak more than it is to allow me to speak. And there's a time that I don't mind being an artist, and I just think a lot of artists they're so self-centered that they're more interested in saying what they have to say, that they don't listen to what other people have to say. So in journalism, we really work hard at letting other people speak.
Over the years, cameras have come a long way.
Oh yeah, I missed the film. I missed the film era, because it was, when you made a picture, there was that special time they would call it the latent image, which from the time you pressed the shutter until the time you processed the film, the photograph was always going to be a lot better. It's sort of like buying a lottery ticket. For a week you're a winner until they announce the numbers and you're not. So that's the way photography was for me. Digital photography, it's instant. It's that instant gratification, and it changes things. I don't like digital nearly as much as I liked film.
For real?
Log. Yeah.
Do you do any post-production, or you just take the pictures and somebody else handles it?
Oh no, I do all of it myself. I couldn't afford having somebody else do it.
No, yeah. Yeah. I get pressed into that kind of service. Actually, while we're talking photography, you've sent many photographs, and I'm going to give you folks his website here in a moment. But this one is quite captivating.
Well, this is a photograph that was probably taken 2 or 3 days after the '69 flood that we were in. That's the impetus for the book, actually, that you're going to see here too. It was a train trestle that was probably a mile and a half from our house, and I think it revealed how powerful that water was. I mean, it's incredible. It was going 35 miles an hour, maybe 40 miles an hour in some places, and it twisted steel, and we had 2 or 3 cars in our yard that ended up at least 2 or 3 miles down the river. So you can't imagine the force and the power that a river can have, particularly a flooding river. And this was the evidence of that. I used to walk this train trestle when I was a kid and try to shoot wild pigeons from there. I grew up hunting.
Yeah. Well, you better shoot them, because don't scare them. Because yeah, I actually saw this one man standing under a tree full of pigeons.
Yeah.
And I told the guy, I said, hey, sir, you're standing under a tree full of pigeons. And the idiot looked up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not smart. The story of Ruth, Bridges and Angels. That's one of your books.
That's my first attempt at a novel. I have written 4 or 5 books before, but they were more how-to books, and they always had photography as a base. And even though this one does talk a little bit about photography, because one of the characters in there was a journalist from Sacramento, which, quite frankly, is partly me. The first half of it is really almost 100% nonfiction, and the second half is it's sprinkled. It's a mix of fiction and nonfiction. I had to write into some characters to be able to make this plot work, but it came about. We were in a flood in 1969, and that was it was a terrible flood that year. I think there was at least 8 other people had lost their lives during that time. So probably the most famous were some Boy Scouts that were trying to cross the Sespe River on a tractor, and so that became national news. And about a week later, then the flood really hit us, and it was difficult. It was one of those times, and I guess, if I don't mind probably taking you why I even wrote the book, when that was when you go through something like I went through, we had 6 or 7 hours sitting on a roof, and it was freezing rain, water all about us, and you knew eventually that the house was going to break apart. You knew that we were going to go down the river, and it looked there was really no way to survive. There's just no way to get around that and do that. So and something really incredible happened there, and that was I kept looking at every angle, figuring what are our best chances. And my mother was on the roof, my brothers and sisters were on the roof, and we had 2 friends spending the night. But I kept watching the current, and I grew up around creeks, so I was able to watch current and watch sticks and how that they move in current. And I tried to convince my family. I said, once this house breaks apart, once the walls surrender and the roof starts going downstream, I said the roof is going to hit the mainstream, and then it's going to bounce off, and it's going to glide into calmer waters and a little shallower waters, and that's our best chance. We need to jump as far as we can. But there was nothing, there's no evidence that there was any way out of this thing. So when the house finally broke and did just what I thought it would do, then I told everyone to jump, and I jumped as far as I could. And when I dove, I ended up diving out, and there was a gravel bank. You couldn't see it. It was about a foot underwater, but there was this gravel bank that had surfaced. I mean, it wasn't there, 30 minutes earlier. And that whole gravel bank surfaced all the way to where it was actually came out of the water, and most of us were able to stay on that for a while. And I've always thought that was when you're on the roof and you think you're going to die, and you really believe that you're going to die, most people are going to pray. We weren't what I'd call a religious family by any means. It wasn't that I didn't know that there was a God or believe in God. Really, I just didn't know God. And that was, so I'm praying that this would work out. And I've always felt like that the emergence of that sandbar was like a life preserver for us, because it sustained us for about another hour. And then eventually the water started eroding, and thankfully a helicopter was able to get to us and rescue most of our family. My mother My mother went down the river trying to save my sister, and she went down the river, and we didn't see her. We're just hoping that she had survived, that somehow that she, was able to get to a bank or someone would save her. But eventually, after this helicopter came and took everybody away, then I was the last one. The chopper flew away, and then he didn't come back for a long time, and the water was getting deeper, and I was not able to stand up much longer, actually. And it was that bittersweet time where you think, I was really thankful that my brothers and sisters and everybody else was rescued, but I didn't think I was going to be. I thought that was really going to be the end. And then when it seemed like there was no hope, the helicopter came back and was really fighting the wind. It was so windy and rainy and so difficult. He kept trying to get close enough to drop a harness to me. And finally, when the harness came within reach, I got one arm under it. And with one arm under it, he flew me over a mountain and started cranking me up on the way there. So that was that's sort of how that happened. And then if I can jump quickly, that about probably 4 or 5 years later, I was teaching, maybe 6 years, I was teaching in Western Kentucky. And we got a call and saying that basically it was a call from a coroner in California and saying that they'd found my mother's body. And so I went back to California and we did these DNA tests. And they proved, that it really wasn't her, or at least that they couldn't prove that it was her body. They couldn't disprove it either. So we, from that point on, I started thinking, what really happened there? I wonder what could have happened. And about that same time, a car had rolled over a cliff not too far from our house, and it unearthed that skeleton. And that was that. So, when I thought about it, that skeleton was only a few feet from the top of the highway, which means that, if that was my mother, in fact, she had survived the flood and had crawled all the way, up the side of this hill and then had died just before she hit the highway, before she could be saved. I mean, I don't know if that happened. So I decided in the story of Ruth that I was going to say, what if she did survive? What if she made it up to the top of that hill? And what if she had amnesia? What if she's still alive? I mean, there's no evidence, there's no grave, there's no proof. And so that was where that story began.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going kind of funny.
Yeah, if you'll find the pause video icon on your little screen in front of you, and just pause your video for a moment and then unpause it. A lot of times that'll clear up that little pixelation that
I don't see the pause. I said mute here.
Well, that's fine. See if you can mute your video. We can hear you fine, by the way.
Good. Well, that's how you don't have to see me anyway.
Well, I'm going to
be looking a lot better than I was before.
Well, I could disconnect you and reconnect you, but
let's see that video.
Yeah, keep poking around, you'll find it.
Well, it's on the. I see the menu on the top, but I don't see what this top of line is. It doesn't tell me.
There you go. It just cleared it up. I'll tell you that.
Well, whatever it was, we did it.
You're good. Yeah. How old were you at the time, David?
I was 17. I was a high school senior, and the great, had my mother survived, it would have been a wonderful experience. It would have been something to talk about and think, boy, it was an incredible experience. But that sort of sets the foundation for the rest of your life, and it would for anybody. And I've told people since then, it's probably hard on my wife and my kids because I just don't care about stuff. I've never really cared about stuff. When you lose everything that you have, then relationships are far more important than stuff. And I've also know the brevity of life. And I think since then, that incident really started me on a real search to find out what I believed about God, who He was, what is my relationship with Him. And so that was the beginning of that search. And so thankful. I mean, not thankful for the flood, but thankful I started down that road a long time ago, and still on that road. You
mentioned your siblings. How old were they?
Well, one of them, two of my siblings were there, and my youngest one, thankfully, was spending the night somewhere else. That was Brian. He wasn't. He was spending the night with a friend, and then my oldest sister was singing with a group in San Francisco. So But my other sister, Susan, and then there was, Susan and Stephen. Stephen's a couple of years younger than me, and then Susan's a couple of years younger than him. She must have been, maybe Susan was 12 or 13, and Stephen was probably 15.
So
And
there you are, 17 years old, growing up real fast.
well, that is, you do that, but I think I think in our country sometimes a lot of us are rather insulated and almost spoiled. And I think if you go to other countries and you see how hard life can be for people and what they have to endure, and yet they can come out of that with a positive attitude, then I just say that's part of life. I know people that had it a lot harder than I did. It was difficult for particularly the first 10 years. I mean, I really miss my mother. I was closer to her than I was to anybody else in the world. And so that was, you don't realize until you get to be 20 or 30 that you still need your parents. You think when 18 that you're ready to go off, and maybe you are, but you need them most of your life. And there were consequences of that. You get lonely, and you make bad decisions because you want a family, you want to be alone, you want somebody to care about and care about you. So it's I like, when I think about it, it's almost like, I don't want to say a game, but we used to have these pinball machines, and I felt like I was given bonus time. I was given like 50 years because I truly believed that I was going to die that day. And I tell people, once you face that, once you really truly believe this is the end of your life, if you survive, it changes the rest of your life. It should change the rest of your life, and it changed mine. So I've tried to be a good steward of the time that God has given me, and I try to be a good neighbor, and try to be a good, a Christian in every sense. I mean, my whole mission in life now is to glorify God in any way that I can, and whether it's with a camera or with words. So I feel very, very fortunate and very blessed, and I hope that I can continue being a blessing on other people.
Is it fair for me to surmise that the story of Ruth is kind of closure for you?
I'm sorry, close?
Closure?
Well, I thought it might be. Interesting enough is when I finished writing that, I was in a Starbucks on Christmas Day, and I don't remember what year it was, but I was in Kent. So I finished writing that, and when I got done, I think it's natural. I just felt so emotional. I sat there and just wept, and I was glad there was nobody around me, because what struck me was, as long as I was writing this book, the characters were always alive, and there was always hope. And when I finished writing it, then I had to kind of face the reality that I couldn't live in Fantasyland anymore. I had to live in what is, not what I wished could be. And so, yeah, in some sense, it gave me some closure. And more than anything, I think I want to honor my mother, and I want to honor God, and I want to be able to leave something for my children and grandchildren, so that they have some idea who she was. Right. And this is a way that they can actually read about her. And like I'm saying, the first half of this book is just, I mean, I had to guess on some things, a few things, but generally speaking, the first half is pretty much nonfiction.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like it certainly was therapeutic.
It is. It's ongoing. I mean, I've written a lot about the flood. I've written a lot about my mother. I've photographed a lot. But it's, I think what happens when you go through something like this, you become sort of a charter member of some kind of a fraternity or club that, it's not one that you choose to be in. But when I deal with a lot of people that have suffered loss, and I tell them the story, then there's a closeness that we share.
Mm-hmm.
There's
it's a bond.
They feel like I can understand them, and that's something that has been a real gift. It's been a real gift to be able to be empathetic and to really feel for others, and to know what I can't know exactly what they're going through, and I tell them that all the time. I don't know what you're feeling. I know somewhat. I mean, I have, maybe my feelings are a cousin to your feelings, but I do. It really does teach me empathy. And right now when I'm watching the photographs coming out of Ukraine, I have a dear friend who's one of the best photographers in the world who's there. And when I look at I saw one of her images today, and I just stopped and cried. It just breaks my heart, what I see people going through.
David, we're out of time, but it's been said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. You've spent a lifetime taking pictures.
Mm-hmm.
But when you try to put the words to it, that's a whole new discipline, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's writing is a lot harder than photography. It's a lot harder. Yeah, it is. But I love it. I'm going to keep at it.
You are. Well, folks, davidlabelle.com is his website, and we encourage you to go there and check out and find out more. But David, you have got a moving story, and you tell it well. You live through it, and you tell it with maturity, discipline, and discernment. And God's going to take that story and glorify himself with it, and you are his steward of that story. So continue, and we applaud you for what you're doing, and we certainly thank you for spending your time here on pjnet.tv with us tonight.
Thank you for sharing and for being so patient.
All right. David LaBelle here on pjnet.tv. Oh, I wish we had more time. Gosh, what a story, huh? That's real life. Well, folks, in just a few minutes, Casper will join us from Colorado, as he does on Monday nights. And I've got to make a few changes and refill my coffee between now and then. But while I'm doing that, I have a challenge for you. I hope you'll take it. It's 2 questions. The first question is this. What is the boldest thing you've ever done, ever, for the kingdom of Jesus Christ? And the second question is, how long ago was that? And the challenge is to never be satisfied with either answer.